Have you missed me? Now, as tradition on this channel, I like to give you as much information as possible, even though since the reboot this channel's gone a slightly different direction in the way we make videos. But one thing I do want to carry over is giving you as much information as possible when it comes to tutorials like this to make your life a lot easier. So if you're using a joypad, even though this is a PC version, the Project Cars 2 itself seems to be a lot more flexible, a lot smoother around the edges when it comes to playing with a joypad. So no matter what platform you're on, I'm sure if you just use a similar setup to this, or just play around with it a little bit, you'll find a good little happy spot to play with. Of course, if you're a steering wheel user, this does not apply to you, feel free to move on, but also this applies to both steering wheel users and joypad users. If you're having any issues that isn't your actual peripheral setup, have a look at the car setup itself. Just go have a look at the steering ratio, that really helps sometimes. As I should really point out, there is a new little feature to these tutorials. On the top right you will see a overlay, which happens to show my controller. So you'll get to see what I'm pressing as it's happening. So it saves me a lot of things to say when we're going through tutorials, which means I can relax a little more and just explain the characteristics of the car more than what actual inputs I'm doing at the time, which will change these tutorials quite dramatically. Now, the car in this first one, the comeback special as I like to think of it. It's been a long time since I've been on Project Cars, it's been a long time since I've done a drift tutorial. And this game has held my hand through it, which I didn't think it would compared to the first one. The first one was very cold and it was very clinical. This is still quite clinical, but it feels more helpful and more encouraging to new players. And the first car that we're going to be using is the Ford Focus RS RX, which is essentially a Ken Blockmobile. So that's what you can expect from this car. It's a crossbreed between a Unicorn Gymkhana drift vehicle. And if you think you're going to start the argument in the comment section about the whole four-wheel drive drifting thing, ain't nobody got time for that, leave it out. Let's get into this. The butterflies in my stomach of excitement, of nervousness. This has been a long waited, probably not by many people, but the happiness that this hopefully will bring to some of you. And yes, we are at, once again, the BRNO GP circuit in Czech Republic. Yes, I've been told before that I pronounce it wrong, but frankly, do I care? No. Is it my fault if I'm not perfect? No. Let's move on to the thing that you've all been waiting for. The setup itself. Now, it's quite detailed, in case you don't know. I mean, Project Cars 2 itself is quite deep. I mean, you all know what the depth is like when it comes to Project Cars and the Madness engine. You could sink the Titanic in it. Let's get into this. I will go through the setup page by page. Feel free to pause it so you can make sure you get down all the little changes to the setup. And do not forget, golden rule, always save it at the end. And you can always come back and tweak it later if you feel like you want to. Right, let's first off, let the car have a sneeze because it's got hay fever. One thing we need to choose before we start, well, it's so much more my choice to be honest. Where do we want to go when it comes to the HUD display? We can have this nice simple display here, or I can bring up a more detailed one. Yeah, we're going for the detailed one. I'm nice and calm on the first corner, the tyres are cold, it's going to want to wash wide, it's going to have to give it a little tug on the handbrake, bring it back in. It will loosen up as you lose tyre wear. Great start. As your tyres wear and your tyre temperature itself rises, it's going to want to drift more and more, so it will loosen up as we start going round. A little bit of handbrake there just to get a bit brutal with the car. Now I will explain quickly. This is worth I might as well just pause for this point. One important point I really must stress. And older players and viewers of my stuff and will know this already, but the Madness engine, when it comes to project cars, if you can drift, there's no arguments about that. But if you actually want the smoke to display, especially when you're in multiplayer servers, of course, because there's no point drifting if other people aren't getting a face full of smoke. That kind of ruins a bit of the fun. If you want to actually make sure the smoke is coming out the back end, you need to use certain techniques that the engine likes. So, for example, I tend to rely on a Scandi flick, which you'll see throughout this, and you've probably seen in previous tutorials, and that's the more reliable way. You can use other ways, but just tugging on the handbrake usually won't result in a lot of smoke. You normally have to also maybe a bit of foot brake, maybe let off the throttle, let the car pitch for a second, then go again, and then you might get the smoke. So it's just a little note worth bearing in mind. Let's take it nice and gentle. We'll give it a bit of an opposite flick into a little Scandi flick. Now, as you can see, I had to steer into it because the tyres aren't really up to temperature yet, even though it's starting to loosen up already. We just give it a little tap of the handbrake there just to get the back end out a little bit more. Really hug that apex and get around. See, like there, I've used the handbrake, but I used a bit of foot brake and then immediately back onto the throttle. See, I had to just drop a gear there, because one thing about this car that I really should mention, you'll notice it as you drive it yourself. It has a bit of mid-corner, mid-drift. Not really so much understeer, but it wants to wash wide. It feels like the front is extremely heavy compared to what it really is. So the main thing you really need to worry about with this car is not so much losing control of it, is picking your line, your entry point very carefully, getting your corner entry speed correct, and then being ready for, if at any point during the halfway point or the exit of the corner that's going to start pushing wide like there, at which point you then proceed to usually tap on the handbrake, drop a gear, maybe 2 gears if necessary, and bring it back in so you don't run wide. It is something that you will probably have to get used to, though. It shouldn't take you too long to do so. We might as well quickly just show you a little trick. It's something I found during testing and during tuning. It's quite a fun little trick with a car. You just come on in, get the revs up, and you have a bit of a Ken block spin cycle going on when you don't touch the grass. You can make that faster if you want to. Normally the way to do so is to go into your front differential, mess around with the amount of clutches and the amount of preload power. That usually is good enough, and you can get it to spin even faster and in an even tighter circle. That's just sort of set up at the moment just to be more ideal for the drifting rather than, having a little party trick. Give it a little flick, tap a brake, drop another gear, and it's going to start pushing it really wide. You've got to anticipate it. Be ready for it. I really hope you enjoy this car. I don't know what's going on with that rear left tyre. It's going, I'm green, no I'm orange, no I'm lime, no I'm yellow. Just pick a colour. I'll take those tyres with me, I don't mind. They can have my bumper as well, I don't need it. The amount of precision you get with this car is absolutely stonking. Just because I can. I know I've gone quiet, but I'm leaning in my chair and I'm just enjoying myself. I love this new overlay at the top right. I love you so much because I can just relax about the car and just enjoy and pick my line and have fun and just worry about getting across the characteristics of the car and the things that you should expect rather than just telling you what buttons I'm pressing. It was a nightmare to get all this set up, but hopefully you agree it was worth it. Running wide there, I think my back tyre's on the grass, but it's fine, we can still hold it. Now that back left tyre is starting to look a bit worse for wear, I'll give you that, and it's starting to feel a bit worse for wear as well. Yeah, see, at this point, I knew that was going to happen because that was the back left tyre, and I needed that for grip right there on the transition, especially with the camber. So usually at this point is where in Project Cars 1 tutorials I did advise to go to the pit, get yourself a new set of tyres and come back out. Or the other option is to slow down for a minute or two, let the tyre temperature cool down, let your engine cool down, which can be a problem depending on your game settings as well. Or maybe, I don't know, I've not checked this 'cause I've only had like 20 so hours on the game, on the PC version so far, is you might be able to turn tyre wear off completely and engine heat overheating, which would be useful for drifting. I've not checked it yet, but if so, do so. Right, tyres have cooled down a little bit. I want those tyres. I want those tyres. Oh, I got one. I got those for sure. Oh, I can't resist you. I've seen you over there. Okay, I know I've gone full chem block now. Shut up. I can't resist. It's the car. And that's pretty much all you need, really. I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I'm going to give you credit here and guess that you're probably well adversed in the techniques of drifting. You're not new on the block. It's not your first rodeo, as the Americans would say. So that's the basics you need to know about this car to help you get started drifting in Project Cars 2. I hope you enjoy it and you have many sideways hours of fun in this beautiful car, and just have fun shocking people on multiplayer servers. Just astonish them, amaze them with your skill. Well, I know it doesn't actually take much skill, as you'll find out for yourself. This car is actually easier than it looks, and my gosh, it's a lot of fun. But hopefully be a lot more drifting coming from Project Cars 2 as a series. And if you've liked it and you want to hang around and you want to see what else this channel has to offer and what's coming in the future, if you've not already done so, do all the usual YouTube nonsense, subscribe, all that lot. Like I said, stick around as well if you want updates, because there probably will be a refined version of this car come out in the future at some point. I can't guarantee it, but chances are it probably will happen. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next week's video. It's been an honour, Project Cars, to come back. This feels like a much more friendly reunion between me and this franchise. I'm glad to be back. Yes, we're on PC now, and glad, to be honest, I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm glad things worked out the way they did. YouTube might be buggered up, but at least I'm still sideways and smiling. And at the end of the day, that's what really matters. And I hope that's the same in your life. Just whatever problems you got, just drift your problems away. That's my solution. Better than drinking your problems away. And I'll see you in the next week's video. For now, goodbye.